I will start by saying I am here also representing my co-authors, Jennifer Twyman, Durstaf Waslati, Yuta Werner, and Hajar bin Ghanem. They are also with us online. So to start with, I want to tell you a bit about our... first, I would like to tell you a bit about... I want to read to you the whole title of my presentation. So I'll be presenting about Mind the Gap, Intra-Household Gender Dynamics and Agricultural Technology Adoption in Tunisia. And this is about a large interdisciplinary project that had crop scientists involved, extension agents involved, gender scientists, and economists. I will start by telling you a bit about the technology. So the technology was chosen by our national collaborator in Rabat in Tunisia. It is the Kunuz barley variety. Kunuz means treasure, and it's a two-row barley variety that is more resistant to disease and has higher yield. To start with, our study was in Kairouan and Zghwan in the northern part of Tunisia. And these two areas are quite similar in agroecological dynamics in the sense that it's an integrated small ruminant and barley production farming, as well as in the social context is also quite similar. We see joint family farming. So men and women are farming the same plot. And we also see that men are the ones that are seen as farmers, and the extension is often tailored to them, whereas women are seen as helpers, and livestock is often seen as their main domain of focus. And we also see that crops are often considered a man's domain. Barley is dual purpose, and as such, it is of interest to both men and women. It is used for consumption, for sale, as well as feed for livestock. So our research questions, we wanted to test different extension approaches to see how can these different extension approaches reduce gender inequalities by increasing women's access to agricultural information, extension services, which they are marginalized from, as well as increase their participation in decision-making around adoption of agricultural technologies in the context of joint family farming. A related objective is to see what impact do intra-household gender dynamics, a topic which is largely under research, related to who has access to extension services, information, and who participates in adoption decisions with regards to an agricultural technology. To answer these questions, we employ a mixed methods approach, whereby we carry out a randomized controlled trial using 4 different treatments. And to evaluate that, we use the survey data at 2 levels, at the household level, as well as at the individual level. The household level was answered mainly by the head of household, usually a man, and the individual level survey was answered by both men and men and women in the same household, typically spouses. We also did qualitative data because we want to triangulate our quantitative findings as well as gain more depth and understanding of our intervention. So we talked to both farmers and extension agents, and we collected sex disaggregated data from interviews and focus groups. So our trials are composed of different combinations of 3 different interventions. The first intervention is the technical training. And in this intervention, we also employed SMS. We sent SMS to farmers. And the second domain is business and cooperative tradings. And the third domain is to offer women, target women, and offer them both the technical training as well as the economic and cooperative training. We had 4 different treatments and a control, and in each we had 140 households, and in each we had 2 members participating, the husband and the wife. So I will start now by talking about our results. I will talk about 3 interrelated domains with regards to women's access to extension services, which I will start with. So what we found is that our intervention increased both men and women's access to extension. However, even with our extension, we find that men's access to extension is more than double that of women, even though we explicitly targeted women farmers. We will see what was happening in a few minutes. We also find that the women-targeted intervention had the highest participation for women, which is not surprising. At the same time, we see much lower level participation for women in the non-targeted intervention, although we never said that women cannot come to the training. So we ask ourselves, who is attending these trainings? As I said, none of the interventions excluded women from coming to the training, but norms did exclude women from coming to the training. So we find that we found that the invitation, as any wedding invitation or any other event invitation, it starts with Dear Mr. X and his family, and often Mr. X is the person that's end up showing to the training. So when we did the graduation of the farmers in our Treatment 1 program, there were only 3 women who participated, and the other women on the side are actually the facilitators. So this is a quote that illustrates the norms in the communities that we were working in. I'm usually the one who takes part in training sessions. It's usually the men who participate. Am I going to let my wife and daughters participate while I sit at home and do nothing? We also wanted to understand from the perspective of extension agents the issues around women's participation in trainings. And what we learned from the extension agents is that not only are women marginalized from attending extension training, but also the kind of training that is offered to them is different. Women are offered training among what is thought to be women's issues, like illiteracy, handcraft, couscous making, as well as domestic use of water. Yeah, so extension agents also told us that through our program, they changed their perspectives on the topics that women can be trained or need to be trained on or want to be trained on. So they said that this is the first time they offer training to women on production of crops. And they said that they gained an increased awareness that women are actually also farmers and involved in crop production. We also found that the impacts of training had, for both men and women, reported that because of these trainings, women have gained their increased self-confidence, as well as men gained more appreciation for their wives' knowledge in agriculture. So, for example, in this example where women were targeted in the training, the lady says, I gained more self-confidence and started to express my opinions better, especially with my husband. And here, a husband said, the women took training courses with us, and I witnessed how women can understand and apply information. Thus, the confidence in my wife's opinion increased. So, because we found very few women have attended the technical training face-to-face, we wanted to see what about the virtual intervention, the SMS messages. We were hoping that it will look much better. So in general, about more than 2/3 of the households that we targeted in all the treatments did receive SMS. However, we found that only 8% of women in these households have actually received the SMS directly. However, 26% of women in these households received the message indirectly. So how did that happen? When we did our qualitative research, we found that it was husbands who were sharing the information with their wives, but also sometimes husbands did not share information with their wives, and the wives sought their information from their daughters or from their children and asking them to read the messages for them. So we conclude that casting a wider net for information can increase women's access to information, but it cannot address the gender gap, the gap in between men and women's access to information, because casting a wider net will also increase men's access to information directly. So now I will move to women's agency and participation in decisions. So more generally, we find that women had less agency, and we used attributing luck or hard work to your success as a proxy. So when we asked what contributes to your success, is it luck or hard work, we were more likely to see that women reporting that luck is responsible for their success than men. which implies that women to start with have less agency than men. More specifically, when it comes to agricultural decision-making, we find that men in decisions related to crops were far more likely to participate in decisions either jointly or alone with regards to crops. So 74% of men were involved in crop decisions, whereas only 36% of women were involved in crop decisions. A different scenario presents itself when it comes to livestock. Women were far more likely to be involved in decision-making around livestock. Even then, we found that men were more likely to be involved in decision-making and at a significant level. So we also wanted to see what is the impact of our intervention on women's decision-making power. So when we look at that, we find that in all our treatments, women who have attended the training have actually gained more decision-making power in adoption, in making decisions around adoption. In particular, we found that treatment 3 and 4, where women were explicitly targeted, women had gained more increased decision-making power with regards to adoption. So then we ask ourselves from the qualitative side to nuance these findings, how these decisions were made. And we found two patterns in our data. The main pattern, which is more dominant, is that men were the ones doing the decisions. And this is an example from a qualitative quote. My husband is the decision maker and farming is his role. I don't interfere in agricultural matters and he doesn't discuss barley issues with me. Another less prevalent tendency, which we find more dominant in the T3 treatment, where both men and women were given the same kind of training, we found that there is joint decision-making with regards to adoption of barley technology, whereby, for example, a man said, my wife and I make decisions together, and we discuss even the simplest decision. So we also found through our qualitative data that when women are targeted for extension, then they are more likely to gain confidence in their knowledge and be validated for this knowledge, and also for their husbands to appreciate and seek out their opinions in agriculture. However, we also found instances where even when we tried to change the gender norms, they were sticky and they tended to stick around even though we tried to change them. So for example, this last quote from a man whose wife has participated in our training said, there is no role for women. Women are not involved in decisions concerning cultivation, buying, and selling. So here at the very last presentation for findings, we are going to look at adoption. So we found that adoption of kunuz was much higher than the control in all the treatments where households were involved. So all the households that received treatment had a higher adoption for the improved barley variety. We found that the highest adoption was in the treatment where both the husband and the wife received the same kind of training. So what were the determinants from a quantitative perspective for this adoption of the barley variety? Similarly, our regressions show that in all treatments, compared to the control, households were more likely to adopt kunuz variety. We also found that treatment 3, where both the husband and the wife received the same kind of training, this was the highest, this treatment was the most likely to adopt kunuz variety. We also found that by using different bays, using T1, business as usual, as well as using T3, the star of our adoption, we found the same results. These results were confirmed using different quantitative analysis. We also found that in households where women are participating in the adoption decision, and in households where women are receiving information, these households were more likely to adopt the new barley variety. So we were confused a bit with regards to treatment 4, because in this treatment, both husbands and wife received some type of training. We did not see the same positive effects on decision-making or on adoption as we saw in treatment 3. So we think that this is probably because the training that was provided to women compared to training that was provided to men in this treatment was more than double. So we felt that maybe the men have felt threatened and they were more likely to assert their authority and feel that maybe on the defensive. So we have a quote here where this husband tells us that even if my wife received 1,000 trainings, I will not allow her to interfere in decisions around agriculture and more generally. So we conclude that extension programs targeting both men and women in the same household with the same information helped reduce gender inequalities related to accessing agricultural information and participation in adoption. At the same time, it also helped increase adoption. Positive correlation existed between households that adopt agricultural technologies and those in which women participate in adoption decisions and also in which women receive information. Women-targeted extension programs have increased women's knowledge and their decision-making power to adopt technology. They also facilitated the recognition of women as farmers, which helped change perceptions held by local men, women, and extension agents alike. We also found, in conclusion, to conclude that in households where women had access to more training than men, men did not validate women's roles and knowledge, and they were more likely to revert to gender norms to justify their own position of authority. Our results suggest the need to go beyond targeting women to addressing cultural and gender norms, which will support women's active participation in agriculture, as well as their recognition as farmers, which in turn supports broader agricultural development goals, such as adoption of agricultural technologies. Thank you very much. These are our partners and our funders. Thank you for listening.